Everyone, welcome to Hitchhiking Stars YouTube channel. I'm finally putting some content in this channel. It's been ages. I know some people have clicked in the past and to find nothing. So I thought what I should do once Mars has moved into Capricorn and the whole mood is about becoming more productive, I thought I should just share some of the interesting charts that I keep thinking, because I have this real active mind anyways, and there's a lot of ideas, a lot of things that I think about. So I thought, why not just start feeding my channel with all of these ideas. So I'm gonna share my screen here with, this is a World Scope mundane astrology discussion that I did the other day at Rod Chan's channel, which was great. And I really recommend you go and check it out as well. So it was a kind of a case study. It wasn't so much about mundane astrology. So now here I can kind of indulge in talking about these amazing, incredible Ks, really. So first, this is heavily inspired by an article from the New York Times. In the bibliography, there is a link to it, so I don't claim ownership to any of this quotes or pictures or anything. As a highly mutable person, I love giving my disclaimers. So this is Juliane. I couldn't possibly pronounce that surname correctly, so I'm not even going to venture. I'm just going to say Juliane K. So this is a case that's happened on Christmas Eve 1971. So there was an airplane crash in Peru and she was the only survivor. So I thought that phrase, the phrase in the first slide of my presentation there is quite daunting, really. She said, the next thing I knew, I was no longer inside the cabin. I hadn't left the plane had left me. Can you just imagine how terrifying that must have been? And I did watch a documentary about her, with her actually sharing a bit of the experience, and she does say that the jungle, because she basically felt in the jungle in Peru, she says that the jungle looked like broccoli, and I can imagine that it may have really looked like broccoli from the heights. But as a person that always felt a little bit uneasy flying on airplanes, that was quite a catching story and very interesting story. So this is a picture of her in 1972. So she was basically 17 years old when that plane crash happened. And she was traveling with her mom. Now the story is a little bit off the curve as well, because she wasn't just a regular citizen from urbanized places. She was actually living in Peru with her parents, although she was from Germany originally, or her family was from Germany. They were living in Peru in the jungle because her parents were biologists. So some info first, so before going into the astrological charts that I have to share there. This is a picture of the lowland rainforest in Punguana Reserve. So that's pretty much where the plane crashed and where she fell as well. That's kind of where they were going anyways. So somewhere in this reserve is where this research center that her parents created, really, in 68 was placed. So the plane crashed and she was lost in this real dense forest. And apparently in the documentary, she says that there weren't even like trees that were broken or anything. So the research group, like the people that were searching, the search group, gave up after a while. So basically she had fallen 10,000 feet, the equivalent of 2 miles, on her little seat, still with a seat belt, like by herself, falling into this jungle that looked like a broccoli from up above. She was the sole survivor of the crash. In the article it says 86 passengers. In the documentary said 94 or something, and I believe that probably is counting the cabin crew. She spent 11 days hiking, 11 days walking on her own in the jungle. In order to survive, basically she had to find a place. She had to find people, basically by herself. She wrote a memoir as well that was published in 2011 in Germany, which is entitled, the title in English is When I Fell from the Sky. And what she said as well, which I thought interesting, and that's why I kept this quote down there in the bottom, is that what she experienced was not fear, but a boundless feeling of abandonment. That's also quite daunting, really, because I would be shit scared if I was lost in the forest by myself. But she was feeling abandoned rather than scared. So that's quite interesting as well. And I suppose that's because she grew up pretty much in the jungle. She did go to Lima, back and forth to study at school, but she felt most comfortable in the jungle with, the animals and nature. And she actually became a biologist. So let's move on. So this is also an important quote that I put together in this presentation. I thought it was very, very relevant. So she said, on my lonely 11-day hike back to civilization, I made myself a promise. I vowed that if I stayed alive, I would devote my life to a meaningful cause that served nature and humanity. So age 17, I mean, that's quite amazing. That's quite amazing. So this is the cause itself. So I need to move my little picture there so I can look into what I wrote. So Penguana became the cause. So from the previous quote there, she says she wanted a cause to dedicate herself to if she managed to stay alive, and the reserve became the cause. So Penguana was the oldest biological reserve or research station in Peru. It was known as a Garden of Eden for scientists. It was founded by her parents in 1968, and her father in the 70s lobbied the government to protect the area from clearing, hunting, and colonization. 2011 was, the creation of the Ministry of Environment in Peru, and that place became a private conservation area. And Juliane was very much one of the driving forces there, based on the article that I was reading from the New York Times. So she enlisted international sponsors. The property expanded tremendously, using those international sponsors. And I have these numbers down here because I just thought they were super interesting to think about the jungle and biodiversity, which is such an important topic right now. More than 500 species of trees, 160 types of reptiles, 100 different types of fish, 7 varieties of monkeys, and so on, 15,000 moths. I mean, can you imagine how many different types of moths are there in this reserve in the jungle in the Amazon? So quite amazing, really. And the chart that you're looking into is the chart of the cause itself. Now, you can't really consider the angles or the houses for that matter, because it is without any birth time. I don't know what time they signed the papers, and I don't know what time Penguana actually became a conservation area. I went on the website of the Penguana official website basically, and there is a link down here where I sourced this information, which is a PDF with the date of the official date of Penguana becoming a private conservation area. So it's the birth of Penguana as a private conservation area, which is, I thought could be interesting to think about in relation to Juliane's chart. So here, what I found was most interesting, really. I mean, we do have a Sun opposition Saturn there, which, Saturn is retrograde. Planets in red are retrograde in my chart. Mars is also retrograde there in Virgo and is trying to Ceres, so that's quite interesting. Ceres being the goddess of agriculture, and I don't know, Jupiter in Taurus as well, like Taurus being connected to Earth, this like fixed Earth sign. But mostly I think that Pluto at 9 degrees Capricorn was something that caught my attention, as well as the Saturn 26 Libra. And I'll tell you why. Let's move on to the next one. So here is Juliane's natal chart, and 9 degrees Capricorn is the degree of her North Node in Capricorn, and is also the degree of her Sun Moon midpoint. So quite relevant points. And if you have dabbled in evolutionary astrology, then you know that the North Node is very much a point of fate and spiritual growth, and somehow what we're meant to be doing in this world. And she talked so much about having something relevant and having a cause, and keeping herself alive, etc., etc. I thought that Pluto on her North Node, when it became a reserve, is quite relevant. Also, between her sun and her moon there as well. The 26 Libra is right on her Neptune. And remember that Saturn was retrograde as well. So Saturn was transiting her Neptune at the time that Pangona became a reserve. That's also very interesting, because Neptune is about longings and dreams and visions, and Saturn's about making it concrete, isn't it? It's like making it concrete, all of these visions and ideas and inspirations. So I thought that was an interesting signature, and interesting an interesting synastry between Juliane's chart and Pangona's chart. Also, Mercury is at 25 degrees Pisces, not too far from her natal moon there as well, activating her Grand Trine in water. What else do we have here? If there's anything else that I would find relevant. Uranus is about to transit her ascendant, but not quite. I think those are the things that really caught my attention in the Pangona's chart. Now, Juliane grew up in the jungle, like I mentioned before, and so she grew up knowing that nothing was really safe, which helped, according to her, keep a cool head even in difficult situations. So she basically kind of knew what to do because she grew up there. She could recognize sounds of the animals, and she knew as well that if she followed a small body of water, she would eventually find a river, which would eventually bring her to people and villages, and her chances of survival will be greater. And that's exactly what she did. She found a little spring of water, and she just kept following it for those 11 days. She barely ate, so there's some people when I did the presentation talking about her knowledge of the jungle and how she would know where to find food, but she didn't actually have any tools to chop down the palms and eat palm hearts, or to reach the high up berries or something. So she basically was very deprived of nourishment, food wise. So she really literally survived on almost nothing, like a bag of candies or something that was in the plane, and she found on site. She was wounded, obviously. Some people asked if she had broken bones and stuff. She did. She had a broken collarbone. She had a big wound on her arms as well that became infested with maggots. She had only one sandal. She had a short, tiny skirt as well. So she's walking in the jungle with one sandal and a short skirt, and she's just being eaten alive by mosquitoes and etc. She also described her eyes as well as like being really swollen and slit, like there was only a slit that she could see. And she also had her glasses broken, so she couldn't really see very well either. So as much as she grew up in the jungle, she was in a pickle. She was in a very difficult situation. So it is really impressive that she survived. But yes, if it was someone like me, potentially very unlikely that I would survive. But now that I know, I would try to follow a body of water. So if you're watching this and you're lost in the jungle, follow the body of water, because eventually you find someone. Anyways, she does mention in the documentary her father's resilience. So her father moved from Germany to Peru. He walked, to the place where, the reserve was, which was a huge, long, hiking, and very dangerous as well. I mean, that was happening in the 40s and the 50s. I don't know when. So yeah, so her father was super, super resilient. And she says that she sort of inherited that. And in the bottom there's the feeling of dying without ever having done anything of significance in my young life was what kept haunting her the whole time, and what kind of kept her alive, it seems, really, because she really wanted to accomplish something, which then brings my attention straight to these Mars and Capricorn. I mean, look at that Mars Chiron conjunction, a 23 Capricorn right on the midheaven. And that's what she's known for, you know. That's what, you know, she's known as this survivor, like someone that never gave up. I mean, Capricorn is about not giving up, it's about tenacity, it's about, you know, being very focused and resilient. I mean, resilience is a huge one that I think about with Capricorn. Mars is exalted in Capricorn there. It's super powerful. The midheaven is at 27 as well, which that also caught my attention because transition Pluto right now. So Pluto in the sky right now is at 26 Capricorn and is crossing over that midheaven. And it is quite known thing in the astrological world that whenever we talk about someone that's been dead or that's, you know, done something in the past, I mean, obviously Juliane hasn't been dead. She's a survivor. But it's something that's happened in the 70s. And here I am talking about it, you know, right now as Pluto crosses over her midheaven. What I think about that as well is almost like she encapsulates something of the collective, you know, and what she's known for has something to do with where Pluto is right now. So her reputation, which is at midheaven at 27 Capricorn, somehow speaks up, you know, talks about what Pluto is reflecting in terms of collective survival right now. And I think obviously it has to do with climate change in a way because she's a biologist, she's pro biodiversity, she fought for that, you know, land, and you know she knew she couldn't die because she needed to do something of relevance. So for me, the relevant, you know, collective thing that she's done for humanity is connected to nature, which is connected to climate change or counteracting climate change. And so there's something quite important in there, I feel, with our midheaven in Capricorn and our Mars Chiron there. Is also, you know, the square no opposition to Uranus Jupiter in Cancer. Some people mention the Uranus Jupiter conjunction there on the IC as a very lucky position. You know, potentially, I don't know. I tend to try and not see things as necessarily lucky, or because if something is lucky, it means that something else will be bad luck. You know, we live in the world of opposites. So if something is extremely good and up, you know, and inspiring and lucky, then it means that something in your chart will be very unlucky and uninspiring. So I don't really like to see it in that perspective. But someone said that, so fair play, you know, Uranus Jupiter surviving a plane crash, what are the odds, you know? Someone mentioned the father sky as well in the discussion. I thought that was really interesting because Uranus and Jupiter, you know, Zeus and Uranus in mythology, and you know, quite interesting. As in, it is also in the house of, you know, the parental axis, really. That Mars opposition Uranus Jupiter is the parental axis, isn't it? The Cancer, Capricorn. So the father's resilience, the family's resilience, you know, something like that. I think that Venus square Pluto is also tremendously resilient. The Scorpio, obviously, massively, you know, survival. Venus, not to forget, is the dispositor of that sun in Libra, so it is featuring, you know, importantly. Saturn and Mars in mutual disposition. Someone also mentioned that, I think it was Rod, when I was giving the presentation. And I think, yes, there's something of a kind of a gift of, you know, when we have mutual dispositions, they kind of work nicely, like a little pair, like a secret agent work together, you know, and someone's psyche in someone's chart. So that is also interesting, you know, the mutual disposition. And it's Scorpio Capricorn, for me, the most resilient signs of all, the like never giving up, you know, highly obsessive, highly committed to a cause, to something, to, you know, doing something of relevance. And she's 17. When I was 17, I wasn't thinking about doing something of relevance in the world, I don't think. You know, God knows what I was listening to, some kind of pop song of that time, which I can't even remember now. But no, she was there, like feeling that she needed to do something significant. So it's really interesting. Another thing that I find interesting of that chart, obviously, an erratic degree rising in Aries, 29 degrees, a fighter, you know, a soldier, but also the grand trine. you know, in water. So that moon at 29, another an erratic degree, 29 degrees Pisces in the house of Pisces, you know, in the natural house of Pisces and Neptune. And mind you, I use Koch house systems. So for some other house systems, the moon might pop into the 11th house. I don't know. But anyways, that moon in Pisces trine that Uranus, Jupiter, and that Venus as well. I mean, that's such a beautiful grand trine. And it makes me think about her following the body of water and getting out of, you know, and finding herself basically and being found, you know, which is that moon in the 12. And also makes me think of that sense of abandonment rather than being scared. You know, think about all the Scorpio and the Capricorn and the Aries, and it's like, no, I haven't been scared, but I felt really abandoned. And I think that moon in Pisces in the 12, in the sense of being abandoned, being utterly alone, could be reflected by that as well. So that's something quite interesting. Now, I want to move on to the next slide, but this is such an interesting chart. And someone saw a mystic kite or something as well. I don't work with the kites. I don't, not for any particular reason. I just haven't explored them very much. But someone mentioned that too, as this, you know, really powerful chart, really important, powerful chart. Also, one thing I want to say before I move on that I think is quite a relevant, you know, thing to mention is that you know, the collective planets, you know, transpersonal planets, Neptune, Uranus, Jupiter, you know, in a square, picking up that Mars on the midheaven. Well, they're picking up the angles as well. So the way she comes out into the world, the way she interacts with the world, which is reflected by the 4 angles, has something to do with the collective. So she comes out into the world bringing something of the collective. There's something that was a sense of a mission, probably, and the fact that she said she couldn't die without doing anything of significance is beyond that Mars in Capricorn. I think it has to do with these transpersonal planets being angular. So if you have a transpersonal planet angular, you better do something a little bit larger than, you know, your selfish existence. I think there's something that you're there to do, to show, to express for the collective. You're carrying something that's way beyond your personal, you know, mythology and identity. So I find that with astrology, there's always a way of negotiating, and you know, if you don't channel that, I mean, if Juliane didn't have a profession, didn't do, you know, it would be too much energy to put into one-to-one relationship. So she might have not been able to marry someone or stay in a relationship because it would be too much and too, you know, too intense. In the documentary, I saw that she's married and they seem happy. They seem, you know, there's a couple of biologists as well with her parents. But anyways, I feel that there's a way of negotiating the blueprints that we see in our astrological charts. So we don't have to channel that in one way or the other, or there's only this way or there's only that way, and we can kind of negotiate on how to spread that energy. And when there are like angular transpersonal planets, you got to do something that, you know, is a little bit larger with that energy somehow. So here's the chart of the crash. Here's the plane crash chart. Charts are sourced from Astro.com, apart from Penguina's chart. So this is, you know, the Astro.com info for when the plane crashed. Interestingly, that Moon Mars conjunction in the 12, which is, you know, the house of being lost. And Aries rising as well. So that Mars in Pisces is the ruler of the chart, is opposite Pluto as well. So there's something, you know, interesting here as well. Chiron on the ascendant. I mean, I'm not very experienced with mundane astrology. I don't usually analyze charts of crashes or, you know, big things, tsunamis or anything like that. So this is not really my expertise. I'm just looking at the plane crash to look into Juliane's chart really, and to see the plane crash signature within her chart and what's going on there. I mean, the ruler of the plane crash is right on her moon. So the Moon Mars conjunction in Pisces is right on her Juliane's natal moon, activating her grand trine as well. What else is there? I mean, Pluto was also opposing her moon, and so interesting transit to be having, you know, when you're having a plane crash and losing your mom as well, because her mom was in the plane and her mom didn't survive as everyone else pretty much. So and she talks about the you know, the shock of having someone that's so close to you. She apparently had a very good relationship to her, you know, with her mom. Someone being snatched away from you like that, like out of nowhere, out of, you know. So you know, that Pluto moon transit came out. Not to say that you're out there having a Pluto transit will have your mom snatched away from you, or that you're gonna have a plane crash. I mean, I think one of the things that really is important to keep in mind with astrology is that there's no one way of having the symbolism come out. I see again and again and again in like astrological groups, you know, people learning and asking these questions like, what are the signatures for sociopaths? What are the signatures for selfish people? What in the chart we'll be talking about, da da da. And I mean, there's so many different ways that that can be reflected, and it will be so particular for every particular case, because together with that person that you might name and you might diagnose as sociopath, there are loads of other people that were born at the same time, and they're not all sociopaths. You can't just say that everyone will be the same. And you know, this chart is the plane crash chart, but I bet there was someone being born around that time in the same place, and so it's not a plane crash, but it's a person's chart. So we need context, you know, in order to give our best shot on how to interpret the symbolism. We need context. So just saying that, just putting that out there, so you keep that in mind. And obviously another thing that caught my attention was Uranus on her sun. So she was having a Uranus conjunction sun transit, and again that massive sense of purpose, that sense of, you know, and she was walking for 11 days. So that sun in Capricorn, you know, 11 days would have been crossing over her north node and, you know, heading towards her Capricorn planets as well, when she was lost in the jungle. So Uranus transit to the sun is a big awakening, is a big sense of awakening to your purpose, to your core sense, to your individuality, becoming your own individual, separating from your father, inner father figure. The sun has something to do with the father. So there's something about that. So anyways, so here we have secondary progressions. And I didn't particularly see anything very, you know, that very catchy in neither in the secondary progressions or the solar directions. And I've got solar directions on the next slide. So secondary progressions, I mean, Saturn progressed over her Mercury around the time that happened. Mercury rules the 6th, Mercury rules the 3rd, you know, I mean, ideas, ways of thinking, you know, becoming quite serious. I mean, Saturn rules our mid-heavens, so fair play, you know, that sense of knowing what to do next, perhaps, you know, something important. I mean, that Saturn have been over that Mercury for a long time anyways, because Saturn moves a lot slower. But the progressed moon was in Scorpio, so that's interesting. The progressed moon was over that stellium in Scorpio when that happened. So that's, you know, also interesting. And honestly, she had a progressed new moon not too long before, isn't it? Because the moon was conjoined to that sun in Scorpio, you know, around 16 months before. Around 16 months, around a year and a half, around a year, 9 months or something before the plane crash. There was a conjunction, there was a new moon in Scorpio as well. So interesting and powerful, you know. There's a Mars square sun by progression as well. Well, she does kind of have it natally as well. But yeah, I mean, progressed Venus popping back to Scorpio, you know, maybe moved on to Sag and went back, you know, have to have a look. Interesting, you know, some of the things are very interesting. I love astrological symbolism to see ways of brainstorming potential meaning, you know. It's not like an exact, not in my perspective anyways. Here's the solar arc directions. Solar arc north node is not too far from the midheaven. Solar arc Mars Chiron square that Saturn, square that Mercury as well. Solar arc Neptune on Mercury, you know, something. important there. But I don't know. I mean, I don't solar arc Saturn on Venus there. You know, so we've got progressed Saturn on Mercury, we've got solar arc Saturn on Venus. Interesting, activating that Venus is square Pluto, you know, at the time that happened as well. So something, you know, something going on there. Solar arc moon opposite natal sun. Big, isn't it? Sounds big. Sounds like a big reflection, a big moment, a turning point, a kind of a revelation of it really feels that this situation that she gone through was very traumatic, as we can imagine, and she did say so in the interviews and the documentary. So it was quite obvious, but it was also quite a revelation, perhaps, you know, about what she needed to do, and a sense of commitment to a cause, to really becoming something, to really making something of herself. Here's a picture of her revisiting the site of the crash in 1998 for the first time with the filmmaker Werner Herzog, and that's the documentary really I watched, is by filmmaker Werner Herzog. This is her quote: "So just to have helped people and to have done something for nature means it was good that I was allowed to survive, and for that I am so grateful." So yes, we can see that sense of purpose, you know, somehow that she, you know, that got awakened during this traumatic experience, really. Here's my bibliography. So all charts sourced from Astrocom, the story, the pictures from the article "She Fell Nearly 2 Miles and Walked Away" by Franz Lids, which is, you know, written, published for the New York Times, published in June 2021. This is the link for it if you want to check. That was accessed a few days ago because I prepared this presentation for Friday, so I must have, you know, checked on Thursday last week. And here's a big thank you for watching. That's my email address, my website, my Facebook page, my Instagram, my Twitter, my all of my social media blueprint stuff. And yeah, I'm beginning to do a podcast as well because I'm all about coming out of, you know, obscurity now. So I'm gonna stop my sharing, and thank you so much for watching. It's weird, I'm just seeing my face right there, super big. And that's it. I hope you enjoyed, and I see you next.